Hi, Rob here. I make it better, that's what I do. So I wanted to add a little bit of extra video about this stuff. If you go to someone who is an expert in dyslexia, in the field of dyslexia, whatever, they might be a professor, they might be working with this, they might be writing books and such, they don't understand this is a memory problem. If you ask them to watch the videos and give a opinion about what I do, they won't understand it and how it works. You actually have to do this with your kid and it will work. But if you ask an expert in this field to watch this, and they won't understand it because they can't do this and they don't do this. Because they have like 6 different major theories of what makes a dyslexic. But it doesn't help you or me or your kid to spell better or read better, to know that what's wrong with them. What you need to do is to teach them what I do in this program and feedback protocol, to teach them how people actually read. They have the letters in front of them, they have the letters and the word, coherent, and they can verify if it's correct or not and all that stuff. And you have all the tools now to do this with your kid. Now I wanted to add something here because people may not understand there's a neurological reason for everything we do. I mean, in the brain alone, processes visual information, because the brain constructs information for us all the time, images and pictures and memories and such. Because if I ask people what is 5 times 5 and I tell you it's 10, your brain is probably going to scream and say it's 25, not 10, right? But the thing here is you never calculated that, you just remember it. Math is much easier if you can remember it, stuff like that. You don't need to calculate it, you just, boom, it's 25, right? But if I tell you it's 10, people immediately jump, oh, it's 25 because everybody wants to correct you, Pay attention if you work with your kid, not to correct them. Wait for the response. So, since there is a neurological basis, now here's the funny thing. I can go into a classroom with, let's say, 30 students and ask the teacher, you're teaching them to write straight? And they go, yeah. Okay, some of your students struggles, right? And they go, yeah. What do you do about it? Well, they have to practice. And I said, well, that seems inefficient and not a good pedagogical thing. I say, I can identify every kid in this classroom who has trouble, writing straight in 30 seconds or less. You think I can do that? I tell the teacher, and the teacher will tell me, no, that's important. You've never seen these kids before. No, I know. Hey, kids, and I tell them, take out the paper, take out the pen, and then write the sentence straight. Start now. And I said, that kid, that kid, that kid, that kid, that kid, and that kid has trouble writing straight. Stand up. And I look at the teacher, this kid have trouble writing straight? And the teacher will look at me and go, how did you know? Let me show you. So I will bring one of the kids who can't write straight forward. I will take one of the kids that can write straight and make them sit across to the other class. And I said, okay, take the paper and write straight. Now I will tell the kids, look at these two. One of them writes straight and one of them does not. What's the difference? A few years back, I was visiting a friend of mine. He was... we had a cup of coffee, we were talking, and his kid was doing homework in the kitchen table. I was like, I'm kind of curious guy, right? So, like Ted Lasso, right? Be curious, not judgmental, right? So, and he tells me, well, he's practicing to write straight. And I looked over and said, well, he's not doing that. He's not practicing to write straight. Yeah, that's why he has to practice to learn to write straight. But he's not if you want to write straight, you have to practice straight. You don't practice like this. That's not practicing straight. And I told him a few times, right? And I said, well, here's the thing I want you to do. I said, can you write straight? I told him. And he said, oh yeah. I said, gave him a paper and pen. The first thing he did with the paper was this. He turned it for around 30 degrees like that. Then he tilted his head and then he wrote straight. Right? His kid didn't do that. His kid was sitting in the front of the kitchen table trying to write like this. I'm not kidding. He was sitting straight up and trying to write like it. And that doesn't work. So I looked at the kid and said, hey kid, yeah, take your paper and do this. Turn it a little like that. And then you tilt your head, and then you write. And he wrote straight, boom, just like that. So the question here, why doesn't the teacher know this? The teacher goes through probably 3 years of education in the university. They pay a lot of money to become a teacher. And they are not competent to teach how to write straight to your kid. They never learn how to do that because they don't know. No country in the world have teachers that teach them stuff like this. Because they all assume if you just practice it, you're going to learn it. That's not how learning works. That's guesswork. So when I was developing, this, I got approached, it's over 25 years soon now, right? Something like that. So my mom called me, hey, my kid has dyslexia. She's in a class with 5 or 6 other students. I think she was really young at the time. They've been, and she was in a special school with special students. That's a very small class. And when she was reading, she got a headache, right? And her mother asked me, can you help me? I said, yeah, she'll be able to. I hadn't developed this system then. So I started working with her, and I had the information I had from the background I had. And I started working with her. And when I asked her to spell a word, she was spelling it with a B. This is a Swedish word, by the way. This started with a B, and then she did this. R-O-R-D. Board. That means table in Swedish language. So I looked at her and said, why did it take you so long between the letter B and the letter O? And I mean, it was like, 2 meters of space. And then she looks at me, this young girl, and she goes, well, consonant and vocals and such are, and I was looking at it, do you read with that, trying to read with, yeah, I said, that's too much work. And I taught her how to put the word together and all this stuff, like I've been teaching in the previous video. And I came back for a follow-up. And what happened was that she started reading fast, no problem. She stopped being dyslexic, she moved up the class. But after the first session, she told me in the second session that she said, well, my teacher told me the long words are difficult. And I just looked at this girl and said, hey, is long words hard for your teacher? And she's like, no. Why would she tell you that? Because they don't know. They don't know how to fix dyslexia in school. And they are special pedagogues, right? This is not the normal teacher. They have a special school with special teachers for special students because they struggle, right? The teacher didn't know. So I taught her how to break down and spell National Encyclopedia. And I'm probably going to make maybe a video there for a longer version, how to break it down and how to teach your kid that, if it's needed, if it's request or something like that. Instead of doing it now, better people learn the basics first. And the teacher told her that she has to read carefully so she doesn't get a headache anymore. But the problem was that she was not dyslexic anymore. And the teacher never noticed. Now, a few months later, her mother called me and said, my kid is going up a class, she doesn't have a dyslexia anymore, she's fine, and she moved up to a normal class in the school, same school, but the teacher is still there, the same teacher, and I think she's holding her back, what should I do? I said, well, move her to another school. And the mother was like, you can do that? Of course you can. So she moved her to a different school. She became one of the top 2 students in the class. If she never met me, she would still, Now, her mother also told me at the time that they had been to a school counselor also, and with her, kids' problems. And the school counselor told her the most horrible thing, I think you can tell a mother or something like that. The school counselor told her, you have to understand, some kids are destined to be a cleaner or something like that. I'm like, Yeah. The problem with ignorance and incompetence and lack of knowledge, because if you show people what I've been teaching here in the previous videos, if they're an expert in the field of dyslexia, they don't do this. They don't understand this is a memory problem. The way the memory operates for us is that you have to remember things. If you don't remember what 5 times 5 is, it's 10, by the way, but your brain will now scream at you and go, no, it's not, it's 25, because when people tell you things that's in your memory will pop up like that. Math is much easier if you do that. So when you writing straight, it's very simple. You have to turn the paper, you have to lean your body and your head to be able to view so you can actually write straight. It's a neurological basis to do that when you're writing straight. Most people don't know that. Teacher doesn't know that. So what they do instead is to teach the kid to practice all this stuff, writing straight. And they may not do it correctly. They don't tilt their head, they don't turn the paper, they sit there and try to write straight and they can't do it. Sometimes, true, the kid can adapt and figure it out and they need to lean their head. Sometimes they can't. And as my friend's kid, well, he could just do it in 30 seconds flat. He just, tilted his head, turned the paper, wrote straight. And I said, practice is done. There was no need for practice. It's a neurological basis for it. So they can practice how much they want, it won't work. Practice has no point in writing straight. You can improve on it, but then you have to lean your head and turn your paper to make that work. And the teacher doesn't know this. And the question is, what else do they not know? Right? When people tell you, and ask you a question like, hey, who invented the radio? Most people say Marconi, the Italian guy. He was a thief. He didn't invent the radio. There was another guy called Nikola Tesla, and Marconi at the time broke 7 of Nikola Tesla's patent. And if you have a patent, you can't do that because that's illegal. So yeah, but a lot of people, teachers and such across the world, have been teaching that Marconi invented the radio when he didn't. Nikola Tesla did. So we have to do a fact check. We have to do, check for neurological basis. If, write it straight has a very strong neurological basis for tilting your head and turning your paper, so you can see that you're actually doing things correctly. Dyslexia has a neurological basis also, because this is not something that organizes automatically. So sometimes you're not organized. Your kid won't be organized. They have all the information to be able to read, but they can't really figure it out. Once you run the previous videos and the program and showing the kids and start doing this protocol with them and give them proper feedback, they will organize accordingly, and then after a while be able to figure it out. 3 to 5 words is usually enough. Sometimes it needs more, but usually that's the baseline here. 3 to 5 words. And the important part here is to understand that you need to build a memory for them. And you've already been doing that as a baby, because when they were a baby, you probably pointed at the lamp and the baby turned their head and go, lamp. They couldn't say lamp, but they were, right? And you did that over and over again until they looked at the lamp and kind of go, okay, I got it. And you have to start doing that with other things. You've already been teaching your kid to do this in a different way. Now you just have more specific information you can teach them. I got a question from someone about ADHD and such, and a lot of people talk about they have a lack of concentration. No, they don't have a lack of concentration. What they have is that they jump very fast between subjects, and they can be hyper-focused, actually. Some of them play video games. They can play video games for a day. They don't have a problem with concentration. What they have a problem with is to control what the brain is doing, because it wants to jump to everything, really fast. Now, it does that for people too. If you look at a kid, depending what age we're talking about here, but they can talk to someone for a few seconds, like 8-10 seconds. And once they talk to someone, they can talk to someone else, then they shift to them for a few 8-10 seconds, and then they shift back to the other person for 8-10 seconds. And they don't forget what they're talking about, because it's contextual. The information we do is we memorize information in the context we interact with. And the same thing is true with dyslexia and overcoming dyslexia. You have to train your kids' memory functions. so they can keep the word stable in the air in front of them. They can see it clearly, they have no space, extra space between the letters and such, and they can just spell cat, C-A-T, T-A-C, and back and forward, and they know that's how it's supposed to be. Once you bring up the new word, whatever it might be, you know, like right or which or showers, or, you know, it doesn't matter. And you may not be English speaking, so you may be Spanish or German or, you know, Italian or, I don't know, Chinese, you know, doesn't matter. The same principle applies. Take a short word, run this, and you're going to get better. So there is a lot of, you know, people believe that for some reason the teacher must know everything they know about pedagogical stuff, and they don't. Some things they teach is, you know, sometimes if your kid has been dyslexic and they go to school, you may not know that, the kid may not know, the teacher may not know, but when you start struggling in school and reading gets difficult, you lag behind. Sometimes teacher will tell you that, well, they will figure it out at some point. Now some kid doesn't figure it out because it's disorganized. If you do this, it will help them organize. And if they also have some kind of stuff that's going on for them that's more difficult, it will still work. It just takes more time. Because now you have to build the function. Because even if you repeat the word, you show them the new word, for example, they spell it, and they spell it wrong. Not all the time, but often enough. And you just keep doing it until they can spell it forward really well. And if they struggle, you go back to the word you did previously, again. And as you can notice, I've been repeating the same thing over and over again in these videos. And the reason is very straightforward. You have to build a memory function even for you as a parent. So you, oh, this is what I need to do too. Yeah, there's a lot of repetition. I don't need to tell the kids how to do it because they won't understand it anyway. You can tell people, you know how Superman flies? Yeah. He just, you know, and then he flies, right? He jumps up and he just flies. Can you do that? And people go, no, of course not. Yeah, but you understand how you do that? Yeah. He's an alien from another planet. Yeah, that's kind of weird, right? Now, I understand how to build a space rocket, right? You have a container, you have some fuel, you have an engine, you have some control mechanism to send the rocket up. But here's the thing, if I build a rocket like that, it's probably going to explode. It's not going to be safe to, travel in, especially the first time you build one. So while I understand the principle of building a space rocket, I'm not an engineer, so I'm probably it's not going to be able to build it so it actually works. That's why you need, sometimes an education and a lot of practice with that stuff, so you can actually build a rocket that works. But I understand it. But it doesn't mean I have the skills to be able to do it. And the same is true with dyslexia. They understand perfectly what you tell them to do, but if they lack the function in the memory, they can't do it, no matter how well they understand it. That's what you have to train. You have to train their ability to retrieve a word, to check if it's correct or not, and make sure it's stable. Once you've been able to do that over and over again with cat, then with the next word, and then with the next word, at some point, the brain figure out how to do this pattern, and it starts to auto-update itself. That's when they're not dyslexic anymore. He has overcome the dyslexia. And the result is predictable. I mean, I was working with a kid here near town here. He was 15 at the time, played basketball. Basically, he was, crashing every test he did and all that stuff. So I was there working with him, and came back for a follow-up, and he told me this story that, after you've been here the first time, he said, yeah, I aced every test, he said. 15 years old, play basketball, struggle with school, dyslexia, and then I go there, and he just aces every fucking test. And then he tells me this. Well, what happened, he said, was my classmate thought I was cheating. Not only that, he said, my teacher thought I was cheating. but he was not dyslexic anymore. He was one of those that you organize properly, boom, and magic basically happens. It's science, you know. If you ask the late Arthur Clarke, he will tell you that. Sometimes science is indistinguishable from magic because people don't understand this. This works. This program, this feedback protocol I developed over the years, it works. I run it myself for years. I taught it to one of my students, which I taught this technology. He worked with a kid. She was like 14 years old. She had a diagnosis from Danderyds Hospital here in Sweden, recognized, right? He applied my technology for her. She went back there to do another dyslexia test. And the testing lady looked at him, why are you here? You're not dyslexic. And she looked at the lady and said, actually I am, because I have this other test I did previously. But then I met this guy that I was teaching in my technology, and he applied that, and now I'm not dyslexic anymore. And I bet that lady didn't ask who it was and what he did. Because, as you know, people in the field of dyslexia will tell you, well, dyslexia is for life. It's just not true. If you run this program, if you run this feedback protocol with your kid, they will overcome it. It will get better. Because it's not something you need to understand, it's something you need to be able to do. And that's what you're practicing with them, to specifically train the memory to retrieve a word, to make sure it's spelled correctly and be able to do it over and over again. Because memory is done by repetition mainly in this stuff. You can tell them, explain it, it still doesn't matter, you can't do it. That's why they're dyslexic. Once you start doing this, they start being able to do something they couldn't do before. Sometimes it's a shock for them, because, wow, they understand something. My sister's husband, I told him about this a few years back, and my work of this stuff and previously and so on. And he told me, you know, well, I read slowly, and I'm curious. I said, what do you mean by slow? Can you show me? And he showed me one letter at a time. He was reading one letter at a time, and I said, man, that must take forever. Oh, yeah. I can't read the paper in the morning before work. I read the headline. And I said, okay. And I looked at how he was reading, and I said, why don't you, if you look at the word here, if you look at the whole word at one time, because you understand what the word means, right? And he's like, yeah. If you read it like that instead, and his head basically exploded. And he was, you know, he was, you know, somehow able to read. And he has not been able to do that for over 50 years. A few months later, you know, 6 months or whatever it was, he and my sister was by here and had a cup of coffee and we were talking. And then my sister tells the story, you know, oh, I'm in a book club and, you know, all these books and all that. Oh, she was really excited. And then she tells him, oh, and the book, you know, you're reading. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm almost done with that. And I looked at him and said, you're reading books now? And he's like, yeah. Like it's no big deal. And I'm like, it took you 3 months to go through a rally magazine, you know, one of those magazines with cars and people driving fast. And he's like, yeah. And now you're reading books. What happened? This guy happened with this technology happened. Ask him a question. You can do this reading differently. Sometimes organization can happen like that. He was reading one letter at a time because his teacher at the time, 50 years ago, has told him, you know, something, and he never fixed that. He just kept doing it. Never understood that you can actually read the whole word at just one time. Boom. Wow. So yeah, writing straight, turn the paper, tilt your head, because you need to be able to. This is why you can walk into a room and see, oh, that painting is not hanging right. And people go, oh, that's correct. Sometimes people don't pay attention to stuff like that. But you can do that. That's how it's a neurological basis for that. So when you work with your kid, remember to be patient. Do this for 5-10 minutes. If they struggle with the new word, go back to the word cat, because you want to build success for them and not make them struggle more than you. Because the new word, they will struggle enough because they have to learn to retrieve the word, spell the word, check that the word is correct, and they have to do that. And once they can do that with a new word that they struggle with, that's a normal success, by the way. Once you can do that backwards also, you have the basis, because once you pick the third word, changes has already starting to happen for them. So, good luck. That's all I can say. Be patient, run it, it will work. I've been doing this for years and developed this for years, and it works. Because instead of trying to teach people how to do things, we teach them how to do it by giving them proper feedback. And it's very important. So be patient, don't stress it, take your time, and they will improve. And you will be able to do something no other expert in the field of dyslexia can do. That's something, right?